So today I want to go over an incredibly strong Lightning Storm build for the Druid for leveling up and starting your endgame farming. Now, as this is a build for leveling up and then starting your endgame farming, getting up into World Tier 3 and World Tier 4, you're not going to have any uniques. So this build is completely focused around getting massive multiplicative damage increases while using Lightning Storm to do massive AoE damage. And one of the most important aspects of this build that also dictates a lot of our abilities is core skills deal an additional 12% multiplicative damage for each active companion. This is up to 20% for each companion. And with this build, you'll have 2 wolves, 1 poison creeper, and 3 ravens. So 6 total companions, all multiplying your damage by 12% each. So this is going to dictate 3 of our abilities, but also give us an absurd amount of just straight raw damage for our Lightning Storm. Now looking at our skill tree, we're starting with Wind Shear. You do actually have to use your generator a lot with this. Once you get more to the end game, there are builds that you really don't have to use a generator, but you need to use your generator a lot with this. We're using Wind Shear. It's a ranged generator and it has some AoE. Upgrade 1 has a chance to make enemies vulnerable. Upgrade 2 gives you increased movement speed stacking up. This is nice for moving around. Now, if you want more spirit, you feel like you're just not getting enough spirit, you can use the other upgrade, which grants 3 additional spirit for each enemy hit beyond the first, because this penetrates everything it's thrown at. Then 5 into Lightning Storm, our main ability, is just channeled ability that builds up more and more Lightning Storms up to 5. So then every time you cast it, it'll cast 5 Lightning Storms, does massive AoE damage. Upgrade 1 means the size of your storm is preserved for 6 seconds. So once you stack up to 5 times, you can actually keep that for 6 seconds. And then every time you recast it, it refreshes the duration. So you could keep your 5 stacks of Lightning Storm the entirety of, let's say, a dungeon. Then upgrade 2, Lightning Storm has a chance to immobilize, which will synergize with some other effects later on. Then we're going all the way down and we're taking our companion skills. First, we're going into Wolves. Just gives you 2 wolves to attack stuff. When you activate it, they leap on something. Upgrade 1, Wolves deal massively increased damage to immobilize, stun, slowed, or poison. Upgrade 2, Wolves now have a chance to fortify you, so this can give you quite a lot of fortify. Then we have Poison Creeper, just a poison creeper that will periodically poison enemies, but the active puts a massive poison on everything and roots everything. Upgrade 1 increases the duration of the immobilize. Upgrade 2 increases the duration of the poison by 3 seconds. This poison actually deals some massive damage. Then finally, we have Ravens. Ravens just randomly come down and attack enemies. When you activate it, it does a AoE of damage over time. Upgrade 1 increases your critical strike chance against enemies who have been hit by a Raven for 6 seconds. So this is either the active or just the random Raven attacks. Upgrade 2, you get 2 additional Ravens that increase the passive damage of the skill, but this also increases our stacking and damage buffs. Then we're going down, we're getting Trample, which is an unstoppable and just charges you forward. Upgrade 1 makes it do more damage to less enemies hit. Upgrade 2, which is the main reason we're taking it, it grants us 40 spirit. So this is our main unstoppable and gives us quite a lot of spirit. Then going down for the capstone, we're taking Urzine Strength, which you gain 20% additional max life while in Werebear in 3 seconds after. So this will happen when we trample, but you also just get 25% increased damage and overpower damage while healthy. And the healthy part, you don't have to be in Werebear. So just 25% multiplicatively increased damage is pretty massive on its own. Then we have our passives, Heart of the Wild to get 3 into Abundance, basic skills generate more spirit. Then 3 into Wild Impulses, core skills cost more, but deal more damage. Then we're getting 3 into Ancestral Fortitude, increases all of your resistances by 15%. Very strong, especially once you're getting into World Tier 3 and 4. You're usually not going to have really high resistances, so this is actually really good. Then 3 into Nature's Reach, deal increased damage to distant enemies doubled if they're stunned, and we will have some of those stuns. Then we're putting 1 into Elemental Exposure. Your storm skills can just cause enemies to become vulnerable. This is mainly to get all of these other passives out. Every 8 seconds, a lightning bolt hits a nearby enemy, dealing some damage. Electric Shock is a lucky hit, dealing lightning damage to a chance to immobilize enemies. If the target is already immobilized, which our Lightning Storm can already do, you deal massively increased damage instead. And then Bad Omen, another lucky hit, up to a 30% chance when dealing damage to a vulnerable, immobilized, or stun enemy to cause a lightning bolt that hits for more damage. Now, all of these lightning bolt procs, we're also going to massively buff up through our Paragon board. Then we're going down 3 into Defiance. Nature skills deal more damage to elites. 3 into Circle of Life. Nature skills that consume spirit heal you for 3% of your max life. This is our main way of healing. Then 3 into Natural Disasters. Storm skills deal increased damage to enemies that are stunned, immobilized, or knocked back. Then finally, 1 into Defensive Posture increases your Fortify, but this is to get 2 into Nature's Reach. Has a 10% chance when struck to fortify you for 4% of your max life. This is again just to help us keep our Fortify because we have some other effects that are based off of our Fortify. And then next up we have our Spirit Boons. We're taking Wariness, take reduced damage from elites. We have Sight Talents, increase our critical strike chance. We have Avian Wraith, which gives us increased critical strike damage. This was buffed up. It used to be additive, now it's multiplicative, so it's a pretty big damage increase. Then Pack Leader, lucky hit, has up to a 20% chance to reset the cooldown of your companion skills. We have 3, so this is pretty nice, especially for Poison Creeper. And then Overload, another lucky chunky hit. Dealing lightning damage has a 40% chance to cause a target to emit lightning damage to surrounding enemies, so just some additional AoE damage. Now your Seneschal customization is probably going to be completely different from leveling compared to once you get into the end game. Now going through World Tier 3 and me starting into World Tier 4, your Seneschal actually does a lot of damage while leveling up, but I have heard it doesn't scale that well into say level 100, so just keep that in mind. Now the main thing I'm using on my Seneschal is Focus Fire. Your companion will just channel a beam of fire onto 3 targets, doing a bunch of damage over time. This does actually pretty massive damage. In fact, the Seneschal is doing so much damage with this ability that it was actually chunking bosses once I got into World Tier 3. Then we have Arcing Support, so it hits more enemies, Burning Support, so some of the damage is converted to fire, and those enemies take increased critical strike damage, and then Poison Support, so some of the damage is turned into poison that applies a poison dot that has a chance to spread all poison damage on those enemies to nearby enemies. So this should also spread our poison from Poison Creeper if that procs. Then I'm also using Lightning Bolt. The main reason for this is because the speed of the cast of this is really low, and I'm using it with resource support, so you gain some primary resource every time it deals ability the first time, so this will be proccing us a bunch of resources very consistently. Then we have Swift Support, so it attacks quicker, so it can just use its ability more, which also helps gives us more resources. Then I just put in Devastation Support. This skill does more critical strike damage just for some extra damage. And then we have our Paragon boards, which starts off with the Exploit Glyph. Now this is super strong because on the first starting board, you can put the Exploit Glyph in at level 1 and get the secondary effect, which is mainly what you want. When an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. Has a 20-second cooldown per enemy, so this causes guaranteed vulnerable, and you can get it at rank 1, so this is very good. Then the first board we're going to be going into is Ancestral Guidance. After spending 75 spirit, you deal massively increased damage for 5 seconds, but one of the main reasons you take this board first is because of the Reclamation and other magic nodes around it, which give you 2 spirit on kill. Then 2 of these rare nodes also give 1 spirit on kill, so 4 spirits on kill. This helps you cast a lot more lightning storms. You also have a bunch of core damage on this board, and the second glyph we're taking is Electrocution. Increase a lightning bolt and dancing bolt damage. So that's what we went over with our passives, that a bunch of them spawn lightning bolts. This will give them massively increased damage and at a low amount of actual willpower. And once you can get 40 willpower in range of this, you also get a massively increased multiplicative damage increase. And then the next board we're going to be going to is Heightened Malice. While 3 or more enemies are poisoned, you deal massively increased damage. That's what we're going to next, so that's going to be a really big damage increase. And then we have our gems and legendary aspects in our weapon, critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. In our gear, you want all max life, and then in your jewelry, you want resist to all elements, especially when you're just leveling up. Once you get into the end game, you're obviously going to want to fill out all of your resistances, cap them all, so you may want to change up your jewelry pieces. Now we went over the most important aspect of this build, which is the massive damage increases from our companions. I'm putting that on a 2-handed weapon right now. This is going to change later on, but while leveling up, trying to get a 2-handed weapon with this on it is very good. Your core skills deal massively increased damage based on your Fortify. We'll have a good amount of Fortify, massively increased damage. Then our other offensive aspects deal increased multiplicative damage. For each second you stand still, up to 30% increased damage, which is massive. And because of how Lightning Storm works, you're standing still a lot of the time. Then up to a 10% chance when dealing lightning damage to overload the target for 3 seconds, causing any direct damage you deal to them to deal lightning damage in an AoE. This actually does massive AoE damage, and sometimes you'll just see packs evaporate. That's just because this will proc on a bunch of different targets at one time, and Lightning Storm hits a bunch of targets at once, so they'll all get hit by Lightning Storm, they'll all proc this, all deal more AoE damage, and just delete everything. Then finally, for our offensive aspects, critical strikes with storm skills charge air around you for up to 2 seconds, causing a lightning bolt to periodically hit enemies in the area for more lightning damage. This is also increased from our Paragon board glyph. And then on our boots, while unstoppable in 4 seconds after, you gain increased movement speed. It can freely move through enemies. We have unstoppable through our trample, so just some additional movement. For our defensive aspects, you want disobedience for increased armor stacking. You want basic skills grant damage reduction for up to 6 seconds. 20% is pretty massive damage reduction. And then you could just use any other aspect you want for your last defensive. I don't really have another one to use right now, so I'm just getting some healing from shape shifting, so we heal a bit when using our tramp. Now, as this is a leveling build, you really don't care that much about the stats on your gear because you're going to be changing it out so quickly. Once you get up into World Tier 3, you're going to get all Sacred gear. Then it's not going to be too long until you get into World Tier 4 and have to get all Ancestral gear. So the primary things you want is just get the highest item level gear you can possibly get and just look for some halfway decent stats for the build. But you're primarily just looking for your legendary aspects and high item levels so you can get those increase to armor, the increase to resist to all elements, and the higher base damage from your weapon. You're not specifically looking for any stats or anything. That's not really important while leveling up. But that's the entirety of this build. This build has been incredibly strong once you get a little bit into the game. This build starts out pretty weak and pretty slow, but once you get some of your legendary aspects, and especially once you get 50 and could get some of your Paragon points, this build just starts to destroy everything. The damage of this build is actually so crazy once you get your Paragon boards that survivability is actually the main factor because you're killing everything super quickly, but you can be pretty squishy. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.
I'm not ready yet. I need more spirit. I must wait a moment. I need more spirit. I need more spirit. I must wait a moment.
That's what I call finder's head on it. The goods are mine.
I must wait a moment. I must wait a moment. I'm not ready yet. I'm low on spirit. I'm not ready yet. I need more spirit. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet.